Hello everyone, myself Jaya Agarwal, Assistant Professor Political Science from SPCGCA Ajmer. I welcome you all in this video. Today we are going to study about the governor of the state. So let's start. The governor of a state is the executive head of the state. He is appointed by the President of India for a term of 5 years. A convention has been evolved that the President normally consults the Chief Minister of the state concerned before finally selecting the governor. Usually, the governor does not belong to the state to which he is appointed. No person can be appointed a governor unless he is a citizen of India, b. he has completed the age of 35 years, and the governor must not be a member of either house of the parliament or the state legislature of any state. If any such person is appointed to the office of the governor, he is deemed to have vacated his seat in the house on the date on which he enters upon office. The candidate for the post of the governor must not be holding any office of profit under the central or the state government. It is to be observed that membership of the Council of Ministers, presidentship, vice presidentship, etc., are not considered offices of profit for this purpose. So, the governor of the state, today we are going to study about the governor of the state in India, and we have studied that the governor of a state is the executive head of the state, but he is not the real executive, and he is appointed by the President of India, and we have studied some conventions regarding the appointment of the governor of the state, where the president normally consults the chief minister of a state concerned before finally selecting the governor. So in this paragraph we have studied about the constitutional provisions regarding the governor, as well as the conventions which have been evolved regarding this office. And next we studied about the qualifications for a person if he wants to be the governor. What are the qualifications mentioned in the Constitution of India? First one is he must be a citizen of India. Second one is regarding his age, and he has completed the age of 35 years. Third one is that the governor must not be a member of either house of the parliament or the state legislature of any state, and if any such person is appointed to the office of the governor, he is deemed to have vacated his seat in the house on the date on which he enters upon office. Next, here comes the concept of the office of profit, and the candidate for the post of the governor must not be holding any office of profit under the central or the state government. And regarding this the membership of the Council of Ministers, presidentship, vice presidentship, etc., are not considered offices of profit for this purpose. Next one is the governor holds office during the pleasure of the president, which implies that he can be removed by the president at any time, and the governor may himself also relinquish his office by addressing a letter of resignation to the president. Usually, every state has its own governor, but a common governor for two or more states can also be appointed. In such cases, the emoluments payable to the common governor are allocated proportionally among the states concerned by the presidential order. Like, for an example, Haryana and Punjab had a common governor for some time, and the governor draws a monthly salary along with other allowances and privileges as may be determined by the parliament by law, and he is also entitled to free uh, official residence. The salary and allowances of the governor cannot be reduced during his term of office. Before entering upon his office, the governor has to take an oath of affirmation in the presence of the Chief Justice of the State High Court. The Constitution has granted certain immunities to the governor during his tenure of office. Thus, he is not answerable to any court for the exercise and performance of the powers and duties of his office or for any act done or purporting to be done by him in the exercise and performance of those powers and duties, and no criminal proceedings can be instituted against him in any court or can and nor can any orders be issued for his arrest. Now we will talk about the powers and functions of the governor. uh, we have talked about the immunities granted to the governor by the constitution during his tenure of office, as he is not answerable to any court for the exercise and performance of the powers and duties of his office or for any act done or purporting to be done by him in the exercise and performance of those powers and duties. And next one is that no criminal proceedings can be instituted against him in any court, nor can any orders be issued for his arrest. Now we will discuss about the powers and functions of the governor. The constitution has conferred large powers on the governor. These powers may be studied under the following headings. First one is executive powers. So Article 154 of the Constitution provides that all the executive powers of the state shall be vested in the governor and shall be exercised by him either directly or through officers subordinate to him in accordance with the Constitution. This implies that the governor is the executive head of the state and all executive actions of the state are taken in his name. He makes following appointments. First one is the chief minister of the state and the other ministers of the council of ministers on the advice of the chief minister. Second one is the Advocate General and the members and chairman of the State Public Service Commission, and he is consulted by the President of India at the time of appointment of the judges of the state high courts. Next one is the ministers hold office during the pleasure of the governor, but in actual practice the ministers stay in office only as long as they enjoy the confidence of the legislative assembly of the state. Next, the governor makes rules for the convenient transaction of the business of the state and for the allocation of business among its ministers. Next, the governor has the right to be kept informed about all the decisions of the council of ministers and to be supplied with such other information regarding the administration of the affairs of the state as he may call for. Next, he can call for any information relating to the administration of the affairs of the state and proposals for legislation. Next, he can ask the chief minister of the state to submit for the consideration of the council of ministers any matter on which a decision has been taken by a minister but which has not been considered by the council of ministers. Apart from all these executive powers, the governor of a state has been vested with one vital power if he finds that a situation has arisen or is likely to arise under which the government of the state cannot be carried on according to the provisions of the constitution, he may report to the president. The president, on receipt of such a report from the governor, can make a proclamation of emergency and assume all powers in his hands after dismissing the ministry and dissolving the legislative assembly of the state. When the president's rule is imposed in the state, the governor acts as a representative of president and becomes an effective and real executive authority. Second one is legislative powers. Just as the president of India is an integral part of the union parliament, the governor of a state is also an integral part of the state legislature. Though formally he is not a member of the state legislature, yet he performs many important legislative functions. First one is the governor can summon the state legislature, uh, prorogue either house, and can dissolve the legislature assembly. Generally, the governor dissolves the legislative assembly only when the ministry has lost the majority and no alternative stable ministry is possible. In this regard, the governor may act on the advice of the defeated chief ministers or use his discretion. Generally, this matter falls within the discretionary powers of the governor. He can summon the state legislature, prorogue either house, and can dissolve the legislative assembly. Second, the governor can address the legislature on bill both the houses of the legislature at the commencement of the new session after each general election as well as the first session every year. Third, the governor can address the legislature assembly and either house or both houses assembled together. Next, he can send message to the state legislature on a bill pending in the legislature or otherwise. Next, the governor nominates one-sixth of the members of Legislative Council where they exist from amongst persons who have special knowledge of art, literature, science, cooperative movement and social service. Next, the governor can nominate to the Legislative Assembly some members of the Anglo-Indian community if he feels that the community has not received adequate representation in the House. All bills passed by the state legislature can reach the all bills passed by the state legislature will receive the signatures of the governor, and he can withhold his assent and return a bill and accept a money bill to the state legislature for reconsideration. But if the bill is passed a second time with or without amendments, the governor has to give his assent to it. The governor has the right to reserve certain categories of bills like those dealing with compulsory acquisition of the property, etc., for the assent of the president. The governor can decide on the advice of the election commission questions arising about the disqualification of any member of either house. If the houses of both the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker of the State Legislative Assembly fall vacant, the Governor can appoint any member of the State Legislative Assembly to preside over the House and perform the duties of a presiding officer till the Assembly elects its own Speaker. Likewise, if the offices of the chairman and deputy chairman of the legislative councils fall vacant, the governor appoints the substitute for the transitory period. During the recess of the state legislature, the governor can promulgate ordinances which have the force of law. These ordinances cease to operate at the expiry of 6 weeks period from the reassembly of the legislature or even earlier if a resolution disapproving such an ordinance is passed by the state legislature. Financial powers. Constitution makes it his duty it the duty of the governor to lay before the house or houses of the state legislature a statement of estimated receipts and expenditures of the state for that year. No demand for grant can be made without the recommendation of the governor. The contingency fund of the state is placed at the disposal of the governor, who is empowered to make advances out of it to meet unforeseen expenditure pending its authorization by the state legislature. Next, judicial powers. The governor of the state has the power to grant pardons, reprieves, and remissions of the punishment, or to suspend, remit, or commute the sentence of any person convicted of any offense against any law relating to a matter to which the executive power of the state extends. The governor can determine the appointment, postings, and promotions of the district judges and other judicial officers. The president also consults the governor in the appointment of judges of the state high court. Moreover, the governor enjoys personal immunity from the civil or criminal proceedings during his term of office. Next, the governor can report to the president that a situation has arisen in which the government of the state cannot be carried out in accordance with the provisions of the constitution. The governor makes such a report to the president in the exercise of his discretionary powers. On the basis of this report, the president can place the state under presidential rule. And in addition to the above functions, the governor enjoys certain miscellaneous powers. Thus, he receives the reports of the Auditor General regarding the income and expenditure of the state. He also receives the annual report of the State Public Service Commission and passes it on to the Council of Ministers for comments. On receiving the comments of the Council of Ministers, he sends the report of the Public Service Commission along with comments of the Council of Ministers to the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly for the purpose of placing it before the House. And discretionary powers. The governor occupies an important position in the governmental machinery of the state, though he is expected to be a constitutional head and required normally to act on the advice of the Council of Ministers, yet he is not to be regarded as a mere rubber stamp of state machinery. Article 163, Clause 1 of the Constitution clearly lays down that there shall be a Council of Ministers to aid and advise the governor in the exercise of his function, except in so far as he is by or under the constitution required to exercise his functions or any of them in his discretion. From this provision, it is quite clear that normally the governor acts as a constitutional head of the state, yet he has been vested with the power to exercise his discretion in some matters. At least, the constitution does not specify the matters in which the governor can exercise his discretion or act without the advice of the Council of Ministers. First one is selection of the chief minister, dismissal of the ministry, dissolution of the legislative assembly, ask information from the chief minister relating to the administrative and legislative matters, refuse his signatures to a non-money bill passed by the legislature, reserve a bill passed by the legislature for the assent of the president, inform the president about the failure of the constitutional machinery in the state, etc. So, the validity of anything done by the governor in his discretionary powers cannot be called in question on the ground that he ought or ought not to have acted in his discretion. So, that's all for today from my side. Thank you very much.